Now let us look at how quadratic functions look like on a graph. We start off with the simplest case when the function is just equals to x squared. This is a very famous graph and it looks like a smiley face. Now if there is a negative sign in front of the x squared, it will look like a frown. It is supposed to be symmetrical, but it's difficult to draw here. So like all cases, when you add or subtract a constant to the graph, for example, if we were to add 2, this is the Y-intercept. That means the place where the graph, the function interacts with the graph. So this looks like this. And at the lowest point, it is 2. So what does graphs of this form look like? Ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, depending on the coefficients of a, b, and c, your graph may look like this. So let's take a closer look. Now we know that the sign in front of the x squared determines whether your graph faces up or down. And we know that if there is a constant, we know this is the value where your graph intersects with the y-axis. Let us take a look at the first example. Y equals to x squared plus 4x minus 5. Now we want to plot this graph. So the first step is to look at the sign in front of the x squared. Over here it's a positive sign, so we know that the graph will arc upwards like a smile. We also know that the graph intersects the y-axis at minus 5. So what else do we know? We know that we want to find the x-intercepts, and the x-intercepts occur when y is 0. So let's find the x values for y is 0. Now you can factorize this, and using the cross method, you can see that you can factorize it to be x plus 5, x minus 1. And from here, x is equals to minus 5 or 1. So you have all the pieces you need. Let's plot the graph. So we know that the graph crosses the x-axis at minus 5 and 1. Now this is a symmetrical graph, so the minimum point is somewhere here, right? There are 6 units between minus 5 and 1. So the midpoint is 3 units from minus 5, which is minus 2. So the maximum, or rather the minimum point is here. It crosses here and here. And we also know that it intersects the y-axis at minus 5. So our graph will look like this. Okay, let's shift the 1 a little bit. 1. So it intersects minus 5 and 1. The minimum point is somewhere here, right in between the minus 5 and 1, and it intersects the y-axis at minus 5. Let us look at the second example. Y equals to minus x squared minus 4x plus 5. Now, first of all, we notice that there is a minus sign in front of the x squared. So we know that your graph will look like this. And we also know that your graph intersects the y-axis at 5. So now the only thing left is to find out where does the graph intersect the x-axis. So to do that, we need to solve this equation. We can find the x-intercepts when y is equals to 0. Oops. And solving this will get you this. 0 equals to minus x plus 1, x plus 5, and x is simply equals to minus 1 or plus 1 or minus 5. So let's go ahead and plot our graph. So we know that the y, it intersects y here at 5, and we know that it intersects the x-axis at 1 and minus 5. So our graph will look something like this. Right, when the minimum value will occur here between minus 5 and 1. In fact, it will occur right in between. So there are 6 units between minus 5 and 1. So it will be right in between. So here it will be minus 2. So let us plot the graph of an equation of this form. Y equals to minus x minus 1 square plus 4. So the same thing applies. We want to find out what is in front of the x squared. If it is a negative, it's a frown, and if it is a positive, it's a smile. So from here, we know clearly that when you open out this bracket, you will have x squared, and the minus sign will attach itself to the x squared. So we know that this is a frown. We know that the constant term is 4 plus whatever constant inside here. And the constant inside here is 1 times minus the minus 1 outside. So it's minus 1 plus 4, and your y-intercept is 3. So what else? We want to know where the graph intersects the x-axis, and the graph always intersects the x-axis when y is 0, right? This line. So when y is 0, let's solve this equation. So we bring the 4 over to the other side and then remove the minus sign. You have this, square root both sides, you have plus minus 2, and x takes on two values. X is either equals to minus 1 or 3. So now let's plot the graph. So we know that this is a frown, and your graph crosses this Y-intercept, which is at 3. It cuts the x-axis at minus 1 and 3. So we know that the lowest point is along this line. There are 4 units between minus 1 and 3. So right in the middle will be 2 units away, which is 1. 1 is 2 units away from minus 1 and 2 units away from 3. So this is the maximum point. So we can sketch the graph. So it will look something like this, right? And it is the same arc you see when you throw a ball in the air, right? The ball goes up and down, so it depends on how acute the angle you throw the ball, but it looks something like this.